Jackie Sr. is one of those names in The Sopranos that hangs over the whole show without the man himself getting much screen time. He is already dying when the series begins, and by the time the audience really settles into that world, he is gone. But in the way people talk about him, in the way they compare him to the bosses who come after, and in the way the family slowly falls apart after his death, you can piece together a pretty clear picture of why Jackie was considered a good boss and where he may have failed. He becomes almost a legend in the story, and legends are never completely true, but they are built on something real. The first thing that stands out about Jackie is that he brought stability. That is something people in that life value more than anything, even more than power or money. When the show starts, you can feel that things are already going bad. The garbage routes are being threatened, scams are drying up, new kids like Christopher are impatient, Junior is resentful, and the FBI pressure is there in the background. But when people talk about the time when Jackie was truly active and healthy, they make it sound calmer. There were still beefs and still violence, but he kept the internal temperature of the family low. He was not a hothead. He was not a show-off. He knew when to push and when to let things slide, and that is what separates a good boss from a loud one. Jackie was also good at keeping himself above the everyday dirt without losing the respect of the people doing it. You see this most clearly through Tony's eyes. Tony remembers Jackie as both a friend and as someone he had to answer to. Jackie was in the same generation as Tony, but he moved up to boss while Tony stayed on the street as a captain and then as the real power only after Jackie got sick. That means Jackie had to manage the tricky line of being one of the guys and being the final word. From the way Tony talks about him, you can see that Jackie managed that line pretty well. Tony does not carry real bitterness about being below him like Junior clearly does. Instead, when Tony speaks about Jackie, there is affection mixed with respect. A big part of being a good boss in that world is not just how you act, but how people remember you. After Jackie dies, people use his name as a measuring stick. When someone says, Jackie would never have let this happen, they are really saying that under Jackie there was less chaos, fewer long wars, and fewer dumb moves. Whether that memory is fully accurate or not, the fact that people reach for it shows the level of authority he had. You do not compare every average boss to some random guy. You compare them to someone who seemed to have done it right. He also understood something that later bosses, and would-be bosses, struggle with: the importance of keeping the peace between New Jersey and New York. The New York family is always there in the background, bigger, older, and more powerful. A small wrong move by Jersey can lead to years of trouble. Under Jackie, we do not hear stories about Jersey going to war with New York over dumb pride issues. He seems to have kept those relationships under control. He was not so weak that he let New York walk all over them, but he was not so stupid that he would start a fight just to prove something. That balance is a real skill. Inside his own crew, Jackie did something that is praised many times in the show. He did not let his ego run wild. When he was boss, he allowed other people to earn. Tony could run scams. Richie had his operations. Ralphie later talks about the old days and gives the impression that Jackie let people breathe as long as they kicked up and followed certain rules. When a boss takes everything for themselves, resentment grows quickly. That resentment is what later brings Tony problems with people like Ralphie and Feach. They look back at earlier times and think leadership used to be more fair. Jackie is part of that earlier time they are remembering. You also see his quality in the way older figures seem to respect his memory. Junior is angry that he was passed over for the top spot in favor of Jackie, and that anger never goes away. But it is not because Jackie did not deserve it. It is because Junior feels he was owed it because of age and history. The higher-ups chose Jackie over Junior because Jackie was easier to deal with, more modern, and less likely to create messes. Junior is the kind of man who takes everything personally and will escalate a situation just to save face. Giving him control would have meant constant fights, both inside the family and with outside rivals. Picking Jackie shows that the older generation recognized who had the temperament to keep everyone in check. Another sign that Jackie was a good boss is how much people worry about replacing him. When he gets sick, the conversations about succession are full of fear and uncertainty. There is no obvious, clean answer. Is Tony ready? Will Junior accept anything less than the top spot? How will New York respond? The very fact that everyone is nervous to move on from Jackie tells you he was a good fit. When a boss is bad, people are eager to see him go and imagine that things will be better. Here, the opposite is true. They all know that once Jackie is gone, there is no one who can play his role in exactly the same way. Jackie also had a human side that made people loyal to him. You can see in the small details, the way he talks to Tony in the hospital, the way he worries about his family, the fact that people genuinely feel sad when he dies, not just because of the power gap he leaves. In that life, emotions are usually buried under business. The grief over Jackie has a different tone. It is not just guys losing a boss, but friends losing a friend. A lot of bosses command fear. Fewer inspire real warmth. That said, The show also hints that Jackie was not perfect, and that some of the problems that explode under Tony and Junior have roots in Jackie's time. One of the biggest things Jackie got wrong was that he did not leave a clear, firm succession plan. Maybe he thought he had more time. Maybe he believed that the people under him would figure it out calmly. But looking at how things actually unfold after his death, it is hard not to say that this was a mistake. A good boss in that world is supposed to think ahead. Who is going to be boss? Who is going to be underboss? How will the power be shared? Jackie either did not settle those questions, or he let them remain too vague. This lack of clarity is what allows the quiet war between Tony and Junior to grow. Tony becomes the real street boss, quietly supported by New York, while Junior is made the official boss as a kind of shield. That odd double structure creates confusion and resentment. Junior feels disrespected. Tony feels like he is doing all the work while someone else gets the title. The FBI sees Junior as the main target, but slowly realizes Tony is more important than he lets on. If Jackie had clearly named a successor and sat everyone down to accept it while he was still strong enough, a lot of this might have been softened. Another area where Jackie might have gone wrong is in how he handled some of the ambitious men around him. Take someone like Richie. Richie is Jackie's own brother, and we know he spends many years in prison. When Richie gets out, years after Jackie's death, he expects a certain level of respect and power, and he feels that Tony does not give it to him. We do not see all the details of how Jackie handled Richie before he went away, but it is possible that Jackie never fully managed that storm. Maybe he relied on Richie being out of the picture in prison and never really created a structure where people like that could be guided instead of left to boil. When Richie returns, all that old anger is still there, and the family ends up paying the price. Jackie also seems to have been too gentle when it came to shutting down certain dangerous patterns. The show hints that some of the gambling habits and personal weaknesses that ruined later characters were already present in his time. Someone like Davey Scatino talks about how he used to be around that world back when Jackie was alive, and you can imagine that Jackie, being more of an old-school, friendly type, may have turned a blind eye to a civilian sticking his head in the game once in a while. That is not to say that Jackie personally destroyed Davey, but the culture he helped maintain allowed civilians to believe they could handle being near that world. A truly ruthless boss might have drawn a harder line. It is also worth pointing out that sometimes being liked can be its own weakness. Jackie is remembered warmly, but there is a fine line between being fair and being soft. When Tony becomes boss, he often complains about how difficult it is to say no. People always want something their nephew made, a piece of a business, a favor with the law, a pass on a debt. We can assume Jackie faced the same kinds of requests. The difference is that he likely chose to keep people happy a little more often than Tony does. While that kept the peace in the short term, it may have created long-term expectations that everyone around the boss could be taken care of. That makes the next man's job even harder. Another thing Jackie may have misjudged was how quickly the world was changing. He comes from an older school where face-to-face gambling, hijackings, and classic rackets are enough to hold things together. By the time Tony takes over, all of that is under threat from big corporations, new laws, and a more aggressive FBI. Jackie did not have to fully confront that new world in the way Tony does. But you can argue that a great boss would have started pushing the family into newer, safer ways of earning before it became urgent. Tony spends a lot of the show playing catch-up with the changing world. Maybe if Jackie had lived longer, he would have had the same problem. Jackie's illness itself is another place where you can question his choices. Getting sick is not his fault, but how he deals with it affects everyone. He tries to hold on to his position for as long as possible while clearly weakened. That leaves a power gap on the street. Tony has to take on more and more responsibility while still pretending Jackie is really in charge. Junior grows more annoyed at being kept just outside the true center of power. Instead of stepping aside cleanly and managing the transition while he is alive, Jackie fades away slowly. In that fading, a lot of unspoken frustrations build up. At the same time, you can understand why he acted that way. Being boss is his identity, his pride, and the last thing he wants is to see the people he controls tear each other apart the minute he shows weakness. That is part of what makes him feel human and tragic. He tries to keep everyone calm by staying in the role, but by doing so he denies them a chance to work out a stable new order before he dies. A colder, more selfish boss might have clung to power just to cling to it. Jackie holds on partly because he genuinely fears what will happen to the people he cares about when he is gone. Another way to judge Jackie as a boss is to compare him directly to Tony, because the show constantly invites that comparison. Tony is quicker to anger, more openly violent, and more modern in some of his money-making ideas. He is also more isolated, more depressed, and more paranoid. Jackie, from what we hear, did not carry the same visible weight on his shoulders. People talk about him laughing in the back rooms, holding court at card games, and being at the center of social gatherings without sucking all the air out of the room. Tony, on the other hand, often walks into a space and everyone tenses up. You can say Tony is better at surviving in a harsher world, but as a boss of a tight-knit local family, Jackie might have been better for morale. Against Junior, the contrast is even sharper. Junior is obsessed with respect in the most literal way possible. Every slight, every joke, every decision that does not put him first becomes an open wound. Jackie, by comparison, seems to have been much more relaxed about status. He knew he was the boss and did not need to constantly remind everyone. That kind of quiet confidence made it easier for people to work under him. With Junior, the men under him are always nervously checking what they can say, what subjects are off limits, and whether he will explode over something small. With Jackie, you get the feeling they could breathe. It is also worth thinking about Jackie not just as a boss, but as a father, because that connects to his legacy as a leader. Jackie Jr. grows up with the legend of his father as this well-liked, respected man. Instead of taking that example and becoming a disciplined, thoughtful guy, Jackie Jr. turns it into entitlement. He believes the world owes him success just because of his last name. That tells you something about the gap between how Jackie was seen and what he actually taught at home. Maybe Jackie, like many fathers in that world, spoiled his son and hid too much of the ugly side of the life from him. As a result, Jackie Jr. treats the life like a costume he can put on and immediately be important in, instead of something you work your way through slowly. In that sense, Jackie's success as a boss may have accidentally set up his own son to fail. All of this shows that calling Jackie Sr. a good boss does not mean he was perfect or that the time under him was some golden age without problems. What it really means is that he fit his moment well. He had the right mix of calm, charm, and quiet strength to keep a fragile, aging criminal organization from eating itself alive, at least for a while. His mistakes are mostly sins of omission, things he did not plan for, people he did not fully control, weak spots he did not harden. His strengths are active and clear. He kept the peace, commanded respect, and gave the men under him a sense that someone steady was at the top. In a world built on fear, greed, and betrayal, that alone is enough to make his name live on as one of the last truly good bosses their world ever saw.